When you retire, one of the best things you'll have is a newfound sense of freedom. Many people who are getting close to retirement say they want to move when they get the chance. When we are working, our jobs and responsibilities usually tell us where to live. But when you retire, there are new things that you can do. So we put together a list of what we think are the top 10 best states to retire in. What you might think is a great place to live now might not be so great when you get older. That's because a lot of times when you get older, your goals and motivation change. The things that make a good place for retirement are different from the things that you value before retirement. To make this list, we use the following criteria as guidelines. The first thing to bring into consideration is tax friendliness. States that are thought to be very tax-friendly often offer things like no tax on retirement income. Also, the sales tax, property tax, estate tax, and inheritance tax in these states are probably going to be pretty low as well. Another very important thing to look at is cost of living. Although cost of living is very important no matter what age you are, but retired people tend to think about it even more. That's because most of them have a fixed income and a smaller budget when they retire. So states with low living costs are especially appealing to people in their later years. Another very important thing to look at is the average healthcare costs. We'll look at how much a 65-year-old couple will spend on healthcare on average. And the last thing we're going to look at is the average household income of retirees. The average household income for a retired household is around $54,000. With all that criteria being set, let's go ahead and look at number 10, Utah. As far as tax friendliness goes, Utah is not very tax friendly, and their cost of living is actually 4% higher than the national average. But the average cost of healthcare for a couple in retirement is below average. And the average income for a household in retirement here is around $53,000. If you want a healthy, adventure-filled retirement, Utah might be the place for you. Utah is a great state to spend a lot of time outdoors. Although it does get pretty cold in the winters, so if you're trying to steer away from cold weather, Utah might not be the spot for you. Alright, let's move on to number 9, New Hampshire. This state is a tax haven because it doesn't tax Social Security benefits and there's no sales tax. But there is a higher cost of living here. It's 18% higher than the national average. But the higher cost of living is partially going to be made up for by the big tax savings. And according to the United Health Foundation, New Hampshire is one of the healthiest states for seniors. And the average retired household income here is around $53,000. So if you're looking for a safe, nice state with good tax advantages, New Hampshire might be the place for you. Number 8 on our list is Florida. It shouldn't be a surprise that Florida made this list. It's a very popular place for retired people. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. It has warm weather, nice beaches, and a very low tax rate. So if you do decide to retire in Florida, you're going to be part of a large retired community. And the cost of living here is only 1% more than the national average. And the average cost for a couple in retirement is about average. And as we already stated before, they're a pretty tax-friendly state. Let's move on to number 7, Virginia. It's almost like Virginia was made for retired people to live here. The average household income for a retired household is higher than average, and healthcare costs aren't too high as well. And also, Social Security income is not taxed here. The cost of living here is 7% higher than the national average, but that's mainly due to rich counties near Washington, D.C. that have a really high cost of living. But the rest of the state is not that bad at all. The average retired household income here is around $60,000, which is pretty high. Let's move on to number 6, Alabama. As mentioned earlier, a lot of older people move to Florida, but you can get a lot of the same benefits in Alabama, which is just right next door. Alabama is also a very warm state and has beautiful beaches and golf resorts. So it's pretty much a poor man's Florida. The cost of living here is 13% less than the national average, and the cost of healthcare for retired couples is below average. But the average retired household income here is only around $45,000. But with that being said, the cost of living here is a lot lower than a lot of the other states on this list. Alright, we're going to move on to another state that has a pretty low cost of living as well. Because at number 5 we have Tennessee. The cost of living in Tennessee is 12% less than the national average. Also, just like Alabama, the healthcare costs are below average here. It seems that a lot of Americans are getting more and more worried about money, especially retired people in our country. If money is one of the main factors of your retirement, then Tennessee would be a good option for you. It's also pretty friendly on taxes as well. Alright, so we spent a little time down south, now we're going way up north, because at number 4 we have North Dakota. Honestly, North or South Dakota might not have been on your radar as states to retire. Unfortunately, this state doesn't offer tax breaks for people who are retired, but they do have low income taxes. So we'd still consider it a tax-friendly state. And the average income for a retired household is only around $46,000. So much like Tennessee, if economic stability is important to you, then I would give North Dakota a chance. Alright, for number 3, we're going back down south. Because at number 3, we have Georgia. Georgia's cost of living is 7% lower than the national average. Also, healthcare costs are below average. And the average income for a retired household is around $50,000. And Georgia really is the best of both worlds. You got the warm weather and the low cost of living. Georgia also gives tax breaks to retirees and has affordable healthcare. Alright, let's move on to number 2. Now, number 2 is going to be a little different than a lot of the states on this list, because a lot of the states are very cost friendly. And this one is kind of the opposite of that, because it's Hawaii, and their cost of living is 87% higher than the average. The average household retirement income is around $72,000. But I mean, it's Hawaii. We had to put them on this list. It's literally a paradise. And if money is of no concern to you or isn't your biggest concern, then I would definitely consider the state. Unfortunately, we know that's not the case for most people, but we still had to put it high on the list. Some other things to consider is that it does have a top-notch healthcare system, and it has the lowest property tax rate in the country. Alright, let's move on to number 1. Now, this state is a lot different than number 2 on our list. And that's because at number 1 we have South Dakota. South Dakota is number 1 on our list because it's the most affordable and has the best tax situation for retirees. Even though you may not consider South Dakota a dream place to retire, you can be sure that living costs and healthcare are going to be really low. Which, as we stated before, were 2 of the determining factors for the states that made this list. So what do you think? Do you think we messed up? Do you think there's a state on here that definitely shouldn't be? What state do you think would be the best to retire in? Let us know in the comments below. And until next video, peace.